Alright, this is a quick rundown of Jean-Paul Sartre's Being in Nothingness. So, this text is considered Sartre's magnum opus. It's his great work as, well, not, don't ramble. Uh, Even has the tagline, a principal text of modern existentialism. So, what's he actually talking about in it? A lot of stuff, actually. Like, it's not surprising he took so many amphetamines because he covers a lot in this. In the introduction alone, his main goal is starting by doing away with the old dualisms, the things that implied that there was a hidden realm that human consciousness couldn't interact with. He wants to do away with these and leave it as there's only being. The events and things, the phenomena we see around things that exist are just a piece of this thing's being. And in the introduction, he starts he lays out the being in itself and the being for itself. These are two it's yeah the if I can find the should have marked the page, shouldn't I? Oh well, this is existence. Shit happens. Anyways, at the end of the introduction, he lays out some in reference to being in itself. He says we must observe always, first, that this elucidation of the meaning of being is valid only for the being of the phenomenon. Since the being of consciousness is radically different, its meaning will necessitate a particular elucidation in terms of the revealed revelation of another type of being for itself, which we shall define later, and which is opposed to the being in itself of the phenomenon. Second, that the elucidation of the meaning of being in itself, which we are going to attempt here, can be only provisional. The aspects which will be revealed imply other significations which ultimately we must apprehend and determine. In particular, the preceding reflections have permitted us to distinguish two absolutely separated regions of being. The being of the pre-reflective cogito in the being of the phenomenon. But although the concept of being has this peculiar I can read words. Has this peculiarity of being divided into two regions without communication, we must nevertheless explain how these two regions can be placed under the same heading. That will necessitate the investigation of these two types of being, and it is evident that we can not truly grasp the meaning of either one until we can establish their true connection with the notion of being in general and the relations which unite them. We have indeed established by the examination of the non-possessional self-consciousness that the being of the phenomenon can on no account act upon consciousness. In this way we have ruled out a realistic conception of the relations of the phenomenon with consciousness. So what Sartre's saying here in his probably drug-fueled state, humans are being in itself. Effectively, the human, the being in itself, is the thing that reflects on the world outside of itself. That's how we create reality, effectively, through our perceptions and the reflections of how we aren't the things out there. And this will come into effect later when Sartre is talking about others and how we relate to them. After the introduction, part 1, chapter 1, he starts talking about the origin of negation, which he's effectively, part 1 is all about the problem of nothingness. So in chapter 1 he has to lay out the origin of negations. And he does this by basically saying that nothingness isn't only the lack of having something. Like the examples he uses of, oh, I don't have any money, oh, my friend is late. These are types of negations, but they're not the essence of nothingness. Another example he gives of this is, or to oppose this, to give a more actual feeling for nothingness, is a blind man, a person who is born without the ability to see. This is something that their being lacks. It's a nothingness. And it's just, just nothingness. Nothingness, if I can find a quote. Yeah, none of this is getting edited down either, so haha, freedom. Get to that later. Uh, Actually, here. We seem to lack here the instrument to permit us to resolve this new problem. Negation directly engages only freedom. We must find in freedom itself the conduct which will permit us to push further. Now, this conduct which will lend us. No. This conduct which will. Now, this conduct which will lead us to the threshold of immanence and which remains still sufficiently objective so that we can objectively disengage its conditions of possibility. This we have already encountered. Have we not remarked earlier that in bad faith we are anguish in order to flee anguish, within the unity of a single consciousness? If bad faith is to be possible, we should be able, within the same consciousness, to meet with the unity of being and non-being, the being in order not to be. Bad faith going to be the Bad faith is going to be the next object Sartre talks about. So yeah, effectively for negation to be a thing, freedom has to be a thing. We have to be free in order to negate things. But we have the issue of having to find a way to interact with this, which is where bad faith comes from. Which, just, I guess to touch briefly, bad faith is uh, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to exercise my freedom and just talk about being in nothingness. The book has a lot of interesting concepts. It's touching on bad faith, causes us to think, is it true? Do we actually only act in bad faith? Do we have no way of acting in good faith? And Sartre doesn't seem to have an answer for this question. But that's fine. Acting in bad faith is part of freedom. But the morality of acting in bad faith is the difficult thing to consider, because if we can only act in bad faith, then morally we should probably never act at all. But we essentially don't have the freedom to not act. So yeah, that's my interpretation of bad faith. Bad faith's about intent. It's when your actions and your words don't match up. So intent is the important part of this. Yeah, no, I don't have the time to go over this. This is just me trying to submit something to you. Sorry it's lacking, but it would be acting in bad faith to try and do this in the time period I've given myself left. So yeah, sorry. Uh, that'll be all for today, I guess.